Okay, if staff is ready, I think the board is ready.
We're ready to go.
All right, everybody, welcome. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Board of Directors of Vallecitos Water District on Wednesday, August 18th, 2021 at 5 p.m. Via video conference. Do we still not have any attendees?
Still no attendees.
Okay, then I'll read the abbreviated version of it. Pursuant to executive orders issued by Governor Newsom, one or more board members may participate in the meeting tonight via video conference. And in this case, as we have been for a year and a half, we all will be participating via video conference. Director Hernandez, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Happy to do so.
Patrick, if you can start the flag, please.
Flag coming.
Patrick, you got the flag? Nope.
Yep. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance
to
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Director Hernandez.
Thank you, sir.
And we'll go ahead and call a roll call, please. Director Eltharp.
Here.
Director Hernandez.
Here.
Director Pinnock.
Here.
Director Boyd Hodgson. And I am here, and let the record reflect that Director Boyd Hodgson has not arrived. Okay, I will entertain a motion to approve tonight's agenda, please.
Move to approve. Hernandez.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. And I hear a second from Director Pinnock. Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve tonight's agenda. I'll conduct another roll call vote. Director Pinnock.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
Director Eltharp.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. I see we have one hand up, and now that with the attendees, Glenn, and
Yeah.
it's perfect timing we're right on public comment. So if they're here to speak on something that's not on the agenda, do you want to go ahead and have them come through?
Sure. Speaker with the phone number ending in 541, go ahead and make your comment.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I want to say that the Zoom is not working. I am not able to log in with the Zoom.
Okay, this is Miss Martin.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I can have Patrick try to contact you to help you out.
Okay, that would be greatly appreciated. I will stand next to my computer and stay on the phone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. And I did also have, it took me about 3 or 4 times to try to, for it to connect. It just kept connecting and not doing anything on the 4th try. It finally let me in. So I had a little bit of trouble too. And I also see that Director Boyd Hodgson has joined us. Thank you. Welcome. If we can let the roll call record reflect that.
Staff? I apologize. Thank you.
No worries. Welcome. Okay, so when we do get the technical difficulties for Ms. Martin resolved, we will certainly let her speak on whatever topic she'd like to speak about. No other public comment?
No, sir.
Okay, let's move on to the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar will be voted upon by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a board member or member of the public requests that a particular item be removed from the consent calendar, in which case it'll be considered separately under action items. Is there a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar?
I had one question on one of the items.
Okay, let's go ahead and do you want to pull it all together, or did you just have a question?
No, just a question.
Okay, go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah, it's just on 1.6, the asphalt. I know we've tried to use local vendors, local businesses. What's it seems like he's pretty good over there. Ware Construction. Do we use Ware? Or do we ever get bids from Ware Construction?
Ed will take that.
We did in the past. You're talking about George Weir paving?
Correct.
Yeah, we did in the past, and we typically send out select bid. He had an issue with one of the companies we were using, and it was not resolved in the manner that he liked. So he refused to bid anymore on our projects. But we could certainly reach out to him again and see if he's wanting to do some business with us.
Gotcha. I know we've had good experiences with them in the past, so I was just wondering. But yeah, nothing to stop anything. I just was wondering.
No,
Thank you.
Good company. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Ed.
Super. Thank you, Director Pennick. Is there any other items that any board members would like to discuss before we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I have a couple of questions. It's the same question for two of the items. I don't think it's I don't think they need to be pulled, but I would like a little bit in our board packets. I would like to see a little bit more information around construction agreements. So I'm not sure if that requires us pulling it and discussing it, or if I can just talk about it now.
Well, please discuss.
Okay. Regarding 1.4 and 1.5. So I noticed that we are, that we are approving, the recommendation is to approve these construction projects. And in our packets, it does say, what the capacity fees would be. And there's a reminder of when the capacity fees are collected. What I would like to see going forward is sort of a breakdown of how that might impact if we had a policy whereby we didn't collect upon occupation. And I'm especially thinking about this because, we're facing a drought that may impact construction generally. And I wouldn't want us to go down the path of, setting something up and then construction halts and we are delayed in collecting those capacity fees. I would like to see in our board packets some kind of breakdown of how, what would happen if we collected a portion of the capacity fees sooner rather than at occupation. And I know that we've talked about that, but I think that it's worth having a robust discussion. And I'd like to see that whenever we talk about approving construction agreements. And secondly, I do have a question. I know that these are prevailing wage jobs. I have a question about how do we check that these, I know that it's not our responsibility to pay the folks that work on these projects prevailing wage, but they are prevailing wage jobs. And in their board packet, it says, that the developer will ensure prevailing wages are paid. How do we check that? Because I feel like that's important. That's, we've lost 20,000 jobs, 25,000 jobs just in North County due to COVID. And, these are good jobs and they could pay well if they are prevailing wage jobs. So how do we check that? What's our process?
Yeah, we typically get certified payroll from the contractor, but I'll let James add a little bit more texture to that.
Sure. Thank you, Director Borhagens. So on our jobs, they're 100% prevailing wage jobs, and any jobs that use public monies is also 100% prevailing wage jobs. And we get certified payrolls, and we get audited by whether it's the state or different union groups, and we have to submit those paperwork. And any contractor that works for us has what they call a DIR number, which is a reference with the state for their certified payroll. So it all is connected. A developer-only project is not a prevailing wage job. So if there's no public monies in the infrastructure that they're building, it is not prevailing wage. So they usually have direct contracts with contractors that they work with. They don't always even bid out to separate contractors. That's completely up to them. So those jobs, if there's no public money basically touching those jobs, do not have to be prevailing wage. A lot of them still use union shops, which pay very much the same, but not all of them have to.
Thank you. And, I think our board packets are really good about designating what's prevailing wage. So I appreciate knowing that too. So thank you.
Great. I didn't really get a good answer to your first part of your question, Director Boyd Hodgson. I don't know if you did, but do you want? Is that too deep of a conversation uh, Jim or Glenn to talk about right now, or should we agendize it? Or
Well,
I would like to see it agendized. Too deep to talk about it right now.
yeah, I mean, I think that it sounds like that's kind of, you wanted to have a deeper discussion, Director Boyd Hodgson.
I think so. And maybe, if it's agendized, maybe we can have a robust discussion and I can formulate sort of what my thoughts are and hear about the context of what we've done in the past. I think that would be important. Yeah, so maybe that's what we do.
Okay, Director Althorpe. Director Althorpe has his hand up.
Yeah, I'd like to see it agendized also. I've got some questions on some of the provisions in the standard construction agreement that haven't been adequately answered to my satisfaction yet. And so I'd like to include that in a future discussion.
okay, so I need a little clarity. I thought where we were going before Director Elitharp spoke was that we were going to talk about the timing of the collection of cap fees. But the question was raised in the context of a construction agreement staff report. So Director Elitharp, you want a broader conversation about construction agreements?
Yeah, I mean, the timing of the collection of cap fees is related to the construction agreement.
Well, it's one component. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would like to fold in some concerns or questions I have for some of the other provisions, I guess.
Okay, so it's a broader conversation about construction agreements,
Yep.
including but not limited to collection of cap fees and timing.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you for the discussion. If there's no further discussion, let's have a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar, please. I'll move to approve tonight's consent calendar. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, thank you, Director Althorpe. We have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar this evening. I'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Althorpe.
Yes.
Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Pennick.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay, let's get caught up here. Okay, that takes us on to action items. And our first item tonight is a water supply conditions update. Is that going to just go straight to Chris, or do you want to kick us off, Glenn?
Yeah, we could just kick it over to Chris. There's one thing I want to add at the end of Chris's. I haven't had time to coordinate what I wanted to say with Chris. I'll just add it on at the end of his presentation. But go ahead, Chris.
Thank you, General Manager Prim. Everybody can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sounds good. So this is an update on your water supply conditions, and I put the report together last week to get it on the agenda. And the big news back on last week was that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change had issued a latest report, and it was the most dire assessment about the planet so far, detailing how we've altered the environment at an unprecedented pace and cautioning the world about, what are the impacts of greenhouse gas reductions. It was a report compiled by 234 authors, scientists, relying on more than 14,000 studies, so quite a few, laying out to policymakers such as yourself and the public the most up-to-date information on the physical science of climate change. The assessment was stating that there's no remaining scientific doubt that we're fueling climate change. So that was the big article last week. However, this week, the federal government on Monday declared a first ever shortage on the Colorado River. That means mandatory cutbacks next year for Arizona, Nevada, and Mexico. And California is not immediately affected, but U.S. Bureau of Reclamation staff and officials are warning that more cuts would likely be necessary. And then subsequently, just yesterday, the Metropolitan Water District's Board of Directors declared a water supply alert calling for consumers and businesses to reduce water use and help reserve the region's water supplies. Further, in Central California, there's a real search for water. The region's suffering through a drought. And what was pointed out was that could threaten the U.S. food supply. Farms and crops currently at risk and regional and local authorities concerned about water for city dwellers, wildlife, etc., have cut supplies to farms. The Northern Sierra Precipitation Index shows values approximately 50% of normal and close to the driest values on record. The snowpack back on June 1st was 0% of average, which is bad. Lake Oroville was at 20%, 24% of capacity last week. San Luis Reservoir at 18% of capacity. And then the Colorado River Basin shows precipitation today at 80%, which doesn't sound too bad, but Lake Mead is currently 35% full, and Lake Powell is 45% full. And if I can indulge for a second, I think Director Pennock was at Lake Powell, I think, fairly recently, and I thought it might behoove us to have him paint a picture of what he saw while he was there.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful still, but I was there about 2 years ago. We usually go on this little hike called, what do we call that hike? It's just a hike where we're on the boat and we swim down underneath this little tunnel and we come up the other side. And so I think it was 2 years ago, that tunnel was about 3 feet under the water. And this year we went and tried to look for that same tunnel, and we had to look up, and it's about 20 feet above us now. So it seems like Powell, at least based on my, observation in the last 2 years, has dropped about 25 feet. And that's a whole lot of water.
Wow. Well, appreciate the comment to help paint a picture there. Locally, National Weather Service, NOAA 3-month temperature outlook, warmer for the San Diego area, above normal favored, meaning probably higher temperatures. And then precipitation outlook, below normal favored, although, the East Coast shows above normal. Just for the board's knowledge, I've updated the drought ordinance that we have to meet the water shortage contingency plan. Probably needs to go to a couple committees, perhaps finance and E3 committee before going to the full board. And public info staff, conservation staff, Alicia's been putting together, with some support from Lisa and myself, a video basically to present to customers here about reducing water usage by 15% and trying to give them clues on if the average household is using 12 HCF a month, you work out the 15%, it probably works out to about 1.8 HCF per month, and you keep doing the math on that, and it works out to about 50 gallons a day. So trying to give customers a video that can say, hey, if you're trying to help us out and get 50 gallons a day, here's the things you can do around your house to get your 50 gallons locally. So Alicia's off today. She's got to reduce her leave, but she'll be back tomorrow, and we will have this video completed by the end of the week. And in conclusion, hot, dry summer throughout California. Snowpack is 0% of the June average. Dry and warmer conditions throughout the summer in the Southwest into the fall. Any questions for me?
Any questions from my colleagues?
Just a comment. At the conference that we just went to, some of these same things were brought up, and someone from the audience mentioned, we have billions, that's billion with a B and plural, bond money for storage that they have not been able to use because of environmental constraints and or challenges. And I don't know how many years of drought we're going to go through and food supply shortages before we understand that we need more storage up north, because we're in good shape down here, but those poor devils up north are in trouble.
Yeah, Director Hernandez, I think I read recently in a water article that there's been no new no new water storage built in Northern California in the last 50 years.
Mhm.
And if we just think, the population growth throughout San Francisco, Los Angeles, I mean, these are big cities, right? And to have no new water storage built in 50 years, that just seems borderline criminal.
When I went on my first tour, we traveled where the site's reservoir is proposed. I mean, it's hundreds of acre feet on the surface, and depending upon how deep they go, could be millions of acre feet. But they're fighting it tooth and nail up there. So, I hope it's not too late, but we need something done.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other comments? I thought I heard somebody.
Well, President Sinell, it's me. I just wanted to add a little bit to what Chris said. So I participated in about a 2-hour-long teleconference call this morning with the County Water Authority and the other general managers, and the whole topic was basically levels of Lake Mead, Lake Powell, conditions along the Colorado River. So the shortage that was declared on Monday is based on the elevation of Lake Mead. That's kind of the driver. And as Chris mentioned, it could be as early as next year in 2022 that Arizona, Nevada, and portions of Mexico are subjected to cutbacks. So that's bad for them. But the good news for California is we have higher priority water rights. In the Lake Mead would probably need to fall almost another 30 feet before we started to see significant cuts in California. And then California would have to figure out how to apportion their cutbacks. So, and I think locally, and Director Hernandez mentioned this, real locally in San Diego County, we're much better shape. We've got high priority transfer water from Colorado River through our IID transfer. We've got desal water. So we're in a good situation, but the conditions are getting pretty dire statewide. And it's just a matter of time before the federal government may step in and ask us to reapportion the allocations of water along the Colorado River. And then the documents won't be worth the paper they're printed on. But I think that's a ways away, but all the agencies are rallying to try to figure out what they can do to address these conditions. And obviously we're all hoping that the precipitation levels increase in the coming years, but just wanted to share that.
Thank you. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris, for that presentation. It is a startling reality that we're facing. I'm glad you did a video, because we were sort of running around our house trying to think of how we could do a video and post it about how to reduce the water. It's come up in a meeting before, and there was some confusion about what that meant. What does a reduction of 15% meant? And it's the math is pretty easy, and having some concrete suggestions, I think, will really help our customers. I have a constituent who asked me today, and I thought it was a good question. He said, and I don't know that we know the answer, but he said, well, with all of the new construction that's happening around San Marcos, and these are more people that will be taking from the water that we have, if we do have to cut back on water, what happens to that new construction? Does it continue or does it pause? And I said, well, Vallecitos we're not really in the business of approving construction projects like residential houses. We approve the water and the wastewater hookups, but I was just wondering if anybody had some insight into what could happen if we have to cut way back on water. What does that do to the folks that we know are planning to move into the area?
I can address that, Director Boyd Hodgson. One of the things about new development, and it's codified, is that typically the new development is really water efficient. There's requirements that any new construction basically be, outfitted with low flow fixtures and so forth. And typically the WELO or the landscape requirements really require, you see it when it goes in, just on Armor Light right here where we work. The new apartments went in down the street, but you can look at the landscape and really realize that what was installed was much more water efficient than what went in 10, 20 years ago, where, they would just drop sod on the property, and that was the typical item. Any sort of development that reaches a certain size, and perhaps James, I know he's on the call. It actually gets a water use assessment. If it's a big enough development, there's got to be a water use assessment to make sure that there's water supplies available to handle the specific development. And then lastly, the point I can make is the new ordinance. If things get really dire, if we get up around 50% or above that, we start not setting meters anymore. So if water conditions become, at a certain point so dire, we would not be putting in new meters at that point.
Thank you.
James, was there anything you wanted to add?
Just really quick. So as Chris was mentioning, so the state requires a water supply assessment and a water supply verification. And those are for larger developments, 500 units or above, and maybe 500,000 square foot or above. For all developments from like, 1 or 2 or 3 lot to all those larger ones, the district itself does a water sewer study, which we look at how it affects our infrastructure and the amount of water that they are planning on using compared to the amount of water we plan on that same amount of acreage. So within our master planning process, we know the amount of water that's planned, even though there's no water being used on an empty lot now, we have planned for water to be used on that acreage. And if there's a difference in it, then we address those differences.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Hey, Chris, I just want to echo too that, great presentation. Appreciate the update on this important topic. But I've given you and your team kudos many times in the past. I want to do it once again. I was at a fundraiser last week, and one of the attendees came up to me here in San Marcos and said, hey, I hate to bug you about a personal problem, personal question. I'm like, well, that's what I'm here for. And he said, I've been noticing some water kind of puddling on my patio for seemingly no reason. And I don't know if I have a broken pipe. I don't know what's going on. Does the district offer any types of services to help me out? And I reached out to Glenn, and I know he reached out to you and Lisa, and you guys quickly went and visited this constituent. And where I'm tying this into your presentation is that it's that public awareness piece, because what we learned from this example was that, and this poor gentleman, I mean, super nicest guy. I never met him before that night, but he's the nicest person that you'll ever meet. But he was under the impression that he had to water his landscaping 80 minutes a week, 80. And so Lisa, I called and checked in with him today, and he said Lisa spent an hour and a half with him and really helped him kind of redesign his irrigation plan, if you will. And it's still yet to be seen if that was the cause of the problem. It looks like it might have been, but that public awareness, that public outreach is so important, because we assume that everybody thinks that, they know how much to water their grass, or they know how much to change out their landscaping or whatever it might be. But I don't think everybody does. And this was an example. And it was just a really nice guy who just didn't know. And one of the benefits is not only is he probably going to fix his problem on his patio without having to crack up the concrete and look underneath it, but he's going to probably save a significant amount of his monthly water bill now. And so he's a happy camper. And I just wanted to say kudos to you and your team for everything that you do to get the message out there, but also for specifically handling this situation so quickly and so thoroughly. It was really nice of you. So thank you.
President Sinella, I really appreciate your kind words. Other board members, if you're not aware, Lisa Urabi is now a master gardener. So, I can do this type of work, but, I'm kind of I can go out and help customers as well, but I am not to the level that she is. And she helped another customer recently that he was basically having a sump pump come on because he had some subsurface leaks on his property. So she helped out 2 customers really, really well within the span of 1 week. And board members, if you get in a jam and you need help and a customer needs help, just give them my number. My extension is 314. We will get out and help our customers.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Before we move on to the next item, I do see that there's a hand up in the audience. Glenn, do you want to, is that Miss Martin or is that somebody else or?
It's Miss Martin, I believe. And for some reason, I can't unmute.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Miss Martin.
Yes, it is 5:30 in the afternoon, and I still have not been contacted by IT to try to get me into Zoom. And I also want to say that when people are talking, could they please identify themselves, because I have no idea who is saying what, because I'm just listening by phone, and so I don't know who is talking.
Okay. Glenn, are we gonna, this is President Sinella, are we going to have somebody reach out to Miss Martin?
Yep, I'm following up on that right now.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah, Miss Martin, this is Glenn Pruitt. I've asked somebody from IT to contact you.
No one has contacted me.
I just asked him again.
I need a phone number.
I'm at 7, but if I hang up, then I can no longer follow the conversation.
Well, we're
normally the help
difficulties.
that can be given to me is via online.
I'm just not familiar with the process.
Yeah. What would you like us to do, Miss Martin?
I would like someone from IT to go into the Zoom portion of the program and tie me into it. Jonathan has done this in the past.
I think I can do that, but I would make her a panelist. Do you want that, Glenn?
If that's what it takes, go ahead.
I need her email.
I'm good with that too, Glenn.
What information do you need, Patrick?
I need an email address.
My email address is one word, all lowercase, Tristan River Road, TRISTANRIVERROAD @gmail.com.
Thank you, Miss Martin. Patrick will reach out to you.
I'm hoping that this works. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to item 2.2, discussion regarding sewer line extension along property line frontage for Mission Villas improvements.
Yeah.
Ben, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I'll kick it off real quickly. So this item before the board has to do with conditions related to a project that's under construction right now. And staff is looking for direction regarding a request by the developer to waive or modify a condition of that project. And James Gumpel will be providing the presentation.
Thank you, President Silla, members of the board. Let me share my screen here. Oh yeah. So hopefully everybody can see the map. You see, this is Mission Boulevard. Mission Villas is the community it's hatched in. And the main item that we're talking about is 203 linear feet of sewer extension from approximately here to the edge of their property line. So it's just graphical, but this basically represents the amount that was in the construction agreement. So this item is actually brought to you at the developer's request. And I'm hoping the developer is one of the phone numbers that are online, because really staff is just going to provide an update to it and then hopefully have the developer talk to the portion that they're requesting. So as far as the background, the board has actually seen this project. The board approved this project for construction agreement back on June 16th, 2021. So not that long ago. To give you a little bit of a history on it, the plan check process started back in 2020.
Well, Patrick.
The plan check process started back in 2020. And part of the process, we conditioned the full frontage extension of the sewer line along Woodward Street. Now, this is a normal process. Matter of fact, it started back over 2 decades ago. The city of San Marcos and the Vallecitos Water District had some coordination letters, because what would happen on, like, let's say new builds, is a city would require construction of either half the road or the road improvements to the edge of the frontage. And then back in, I don't know if it was the 80s, a district would not always do that. So then when we would condition a developer in the future, they would end up ripping up a new road to put in a sewer line or a water line for us. So between coordination with the city of San Marcos over 2 decades ago, we both were pretty consistent of basically putting a policy together that requires full extension across the frontage. And the reason this is done is because there may be benefiting properties. And if you can see, these properties, whether they connect or not, they are potential benefiting properties. So if the Reza share property were to develop in the future, they get sewer to here and not have to cut across the frontage and disturb existing ratepayers and customers, because they would just be basically building to the property line and across their frontage, depending on the condition. Now, staff applies this uniformly, but we look at it case by case. So in other words, if this is a dead end line, there's no reason. In other words, let's say this is the top of the hill and it's all downhill going to the north, then there's no reason to extend the sewer. And the last thing staff wants is a dead end sewer line with no connections. So we work with the development hand in hand. So this item was put in as a condition of the development back in 2020. Then there was discussions with the developer from there on out. The developer indicated that there was no reason for this extension across the frontage because the Reza Shara property, which is the APN just to the north, intended on sewering to the north. Now, staff went out there, took a look, and the top of the hill is roughly where my mouse is. So depending on what happens at the Reza Shara property, they could sewer to the north or sewer to the south. But since we don't know that, we kept the conditions in place. Talking with the developer, which is KB Homes, this Mission Villa project is roughly going to build 67 multifamily units. And they're actually building the sewer here and across Mission to connect into basically the upper portion of our sewer interceptor project, a very large sewer that comes across. And they wanted a waiver from this portion itself. So we met with KB Homes several times. We met with them in April to start discussing the options of what to do here. But we gave them several options that the district would accept. The big thing was staff was not willing to waive the requirement of this extension without some type of guarantee that that the district and its ratepayers wouldn't be held liable for this portion of pipe sometime in the future. So working with KB Homes, one of the recommendations that came up was possibly getting an agreement with the Reza Shara property. Now, the engineer that is working for Mission Villas is also the same engineer that was working with Reza Shara on their entitlements, and he knew that their intent was to sewer to the north. So staff basically worked with legal counsel and KB's legal counsel to draft up an agreement for Reza Shara that says we'll sewer to the north. And we worked this out in May. And basically on page 77 of the board packet, you kind of see the 3 main points, which was the Reza Shara property intends on sewering to the north. And if the Reza Shara property were to sewer to the south, the district would not be held financially liable for this 203-foot portion that they would have to extend across Mission Villas frontage. And then KB will also pay for a sewer study, like the water sewer study I mentioned in the previous item, to see if possible, can the Reza Shara sewer either way? What's viable? So we did the sewer study, and we showed that, that Reza property could sewer to the south. It's a shorter run, or it could sewer to the north. It'll come up here kind of off the page. I don't know if it's just off the page. It's a much longer run, and then it'll come across and hook into the same pipe here. The reason they can't come across, it doesn't show this well, is this is basically the creek and it's environmental and there's no road here. You can't come across that creek and connect in, and our sewer line is right adjacent to it. So they would have to go north and across to the next road up top. So they had both availabilities. So working with KB Homes, we basically said, well, we're going to leave the condition of this 203 feet in until we get this Reza Shara agreement, or we'll waive it if you want to wait till you get the agreement for your construction agreement. So KB Homes elected to move forward at the June 16th board meeting with the condition of this 203 feet in. And then the staff's intent is once we get the actual agreement from Reza Shara, we would end up coming back to the board and removing this actual extension. But unfortunately, Reza Shara has not signed the agreement. So as it sits today, KB Homes has an agreement that is signed by KB and signed by the district and approved by the board that includes this 203 foot. So that happened on June 16th of this year. On July 21st, KB Homes contacted the district and told staff they do not intend to build this portion of the pipeline. Staff contacted them back and said it is part of their construction agreement. They are legally obligated to build it, and they will not be allowed to have acceptance of the pipeline since it's all part of one construction agreement without some type of waiver or getting the agreement. We discussed this with KB a few times, and on page 78 of the board pack, we kind of gave KB its options. We said that KB's first option is obviously to construct the actual 203 linear feet of sewer along its frontage as conditioned and agreed upon between the board and KB. They could supply the Reza agreement as discussed in this board package and is discussed with KB, or it could provide a deposit, a full construction dollar deposit for this portion that the district will hold. And if Reza Shara were to sewer to the north, we would put that as a contribution towards this 203 lineal feet. If the Reza Shara property sewers to the north, then that could be refunded back to KB Homes. This way, it ensures that the district and its ratepayers would have no future liability for providing a waiver from our standard practice and our policy of waiving this 203 feet. KB Homes did not agree to any of the other options, but requested that this item be brought to the board for consideration. And I'm hoping, I know we're having some technical difficulties with the Zoom, so I'm hoping that one of the three callers is somebody from KB that could actually speak to what they're actually requesting. Because at this point, staff does not have a recommendation. Staff is just providing the background and history. And really, this item is brought forward at the request of KB.
Thank you, James. I appreciate the context. Glenn, do we know if there's any representatives from KB Homes with us right now?
There's 3 phone-ins, and I don't know who they are. Maybe Patrick can help me. If somebody calls in, how do they express a desire to speak? They hit like #6 or something. Do you know, Patrick?
I just know that they need to raise their hand, and then you can allow them to speak.
Yeah, but if they're phoning in, they can't raise their hand. So I don't know how to do that.
I don't know that feature, but let me see if I can look it up real quick.
I think it's #6, Glenn.
Is it #6? So any of the attendees who have called in, if you want to speak on this item, try hitting #6 on your phone, and that'll show a raised hand. Then I can allow you to speak.
There's a guest GM with their hand raised. What's that?
This is Gail Martin. Can you hear me?
Yes, Miss Martin.
Yes, when I phone in, if I want to raise my hand, I have to press *9.
*9. Okay.
Thank you, Miss Martin.
Correct. *9.
Thank you.
Okay, I see a hand up coming up. So thank you, Miss Martin.
Would you like me to call them?
Yeah, we can have. I don't know if they have a presentation. If they just let's bring them on and let's talk.
Okay, attendee with the phone number ending in 288. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Steve Ruffner with KB Home. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it's been frustrating. We can't get on Zoom, so I really appreciate the board letting us speak, and thanks to staff for making the presentation. I think the main issue here isn't really the viability of Mr. Reza's sewer going south or north. It's the inviability of anyone to go south from his project because it's solid rock. We have been working on our project now for months, and basically it's solid granite. And right at the intersection where we're making our connection to go towards the west on Mission Boulevard, if you go north from there, you're going to have to chip through solid rock, and no one knows how long that will take. I've done a similar issue on our Viewpoint project down the street, and it literally took months of chipping, which would mean a Woodward shutdown and months of chipping, which would cost, in our estimate, a lot more money than Mr. Reza going to the north. Unfortunately, Mr. Reza has not been cooperative and refuses to sign any kind of an agreement with us, and refuses to say whether he'll go north or south, and he does not have any entitlements on his property. And so at this point, we would request respectfully that the board consider that if we do not chip away for months on end going north, I don't believe Mr. Reza would go to the north. I think it's way easier for him. If you look at his project, just by looking at the map that's probably been displayed by the staff, his project is mostly solid rock. And so it's going to be very difficult for him to come south. And if you looked on the Google Maps, you would see at the intersection where that street was literally cut through solid rock. And so I guess just from a standpoint of constructability, I would request the board consider a fourth option, which is to just let us do our frontage from the current design. And if Mr. Shera ever gets his entitlements, he requested to go to the north, which will be much easier than going to the south. Staff is correct; it's a shorter distance, but when you have to go through solid rock, that doesn't really matter. It's going to be a really significant effort to go that way, and we just don't feel that one, he would go that way, and two, he does not have any entitlements. And so I know we say, well, in the future someone may build that, but right now it's not entitled to be built. So I would just respectfully request that you consider that the infrastructure we're putting in on Mission be satisfactory for our community, and I really appreciate getting the chance to talk to you.
Thank you, Mr. Ruffner. If there's no other speakers from the public, I had a quick question. James, with the proposed sewer route for Mission Villas to go, looks like almost directly west and then a little bit south and then down Mission, will that meet their needs for their sewer requirements?
Yeah, it absolutely.
They don't need that 203 the pipe to nowhere, right?
Yeah, they don't need it. And from a staff perspective, if it never gets used, staff doesn't want it either. Our concern is if Reza or the property next door decides to sewer to the south, then the district may be held liable for that portion, and that's why the deposit in lieu, which we've done before, was recommended. So this way, it limits liability.
So if the pipe is built, who maintains it? Us?
We do. Yep.
And we have no idea how long we'll have to maintain that pipe if and whenever there's a project to the north.
Correct. And again, to be clear, staff does not want a dead end pipe either.
I know. I understand.
We're in support of that portion of it.
And it's interesting because one of my frustrations with government in general is that we try to operate under these guidelines, and it's not James and your team and you guys do a phenomenal job, and I know that we have to provide you guidelines and standards and stuff that you can operate and make decisions day by day, but those standards might be good for 90% of the projects or even 95% of the projects that come your way, but then there are standards and guidelines by their very nature are usually kind of one size fit all type of things, and every once in a while there's a project that maybe is an exception, and what I'm thinking here is if we applied those same standards to the northern project, at some point down the road, whatever that might be, 5 years, 10, 15 years, would we, and that northern project wanted to go south, we would still require them to run a sewer line all the way north along their frontage, right? Even if they weren't even going to use it?
No, we never do that. As
Well,
I mentioned kind of in my presentation, what we do is we look at the project by project until we hit that dead end. So if you look at our system throughout how it's built out, when we have that dead end where there's no potential for benefiting properties, then we just make them bring it 10 feet inside their property line if appropriate, or wherever their natural connection is. We only apply it is if there's a potential need for it. So in other words, if this was the top of the hill, kind of where my mouse is, and it went all downhill this way, and that was a natural flow, we would have never even conditioned them in the first place. So if you look at every project by project, you'll see some that the sewer line or the water line stops within the property line. That's because there's no potential benefiting properties. And that's kind of the way the policy is written. It has that flexibility. So this way we don't overbuild infrastructure and we don't build useless infrastructure.
Okay, but it does look like there's open space further to the north, even past the I mean, I can't see it from the picture that you have that well.
Yeah, so it's really the Reza property. It's this property across the street. This property looks way too wooded, so I don't really know much about it. So there's one property for sure.
Can you hear me?
2, 3 properties potentially.
Okay. Hey, Patrick, you're not on mute. I have some more thoughts, but I wanted to open it up for any other directors. I see Director Boyd Hodgson. You have your hand up.
Thank you. So I understand that the 203 linear feet was part of the original construction agreement. And I think what I'm missing is why did we feel like there would be a liability for the district there to build something into the construction agreement that we weren't sure was going to be used? If I just like a little bit more clarity around that. And it is unfortunate that, as it turns out, it's in the construction agreement and the developer agreed to that. And it turns out it's going to be very difficult to build because of the rocky soil. But it seems like that maybe should have been investigated before the construction agreement was signed. But it seems like if it's not necessary, then we should waive it. But I think I'm missing something fundamental here. If you could clarify that, thank you.
Sure. So our standard policy is if there's a benefiting property on that the sewer line extension can benefit. So if you think about Rancho Coronado or other little developments, every little house that was developed, they brought a water line in that case, or if there was a sewer line across their whole frontage, and the next neighbor would develop a property, bring it across their whole frontage until you got to the dead end. And then that last person would just bring it within their property line. It made for orderly development, like orderly planning. So that's our standard policy. So Reza Shara, in theory, could come in and say, hey, the board waived this extension. I'm not responsible for it. So you, Vallecitos Water District, need to contribute towards this if he decides to go south. Now, the developer, KB Homes, may be right. He may go north. It may be a moot point. We tried to get that in writing. Obviously, that's not happened. From a staff standpoint, all we care about is saving and protecting the district's ratepayers and liabilities of the district. So we don't necessarily want this pipe built. So an option that we have used in the past where there is a question of whether a pipeline is necessary or not is to do a deposit, basically a cashier's check for the full current construction value. We hold it. Value, obviously, construction increases every year, but we also earn interest on that money every year. And then if and when this project comes in, the money is available from the developer who would have originally was conditioned to build it to basically be a in-kind contribution for it. So this way the district ratepayers aren't liable through our other funds to pay for this portion. We've done that a few times in the past where we had these type of conditions where we had a potential benefiting property that could benefit from it, but no guarantee. And so therefore we went ahead instead of building the infrastructure, took a different option. So it is something that we have experienced in the past. And that's the main reason. So at this point, you'd have not that the board would approve it, but you'd have a developer that could point out and say, you know, hey, this was waived. This would have been a condition and you waived it. It's part of your policy. So I should not be held liable for the cost of this 203 feet. I hope that answers your question, Director.
It is part of policy. Did I
Yes.
hear you? It is part of our current policy?
Yes.
Okay.
And I believe I kind of put I think on page 76, I put the excerpt of the policy so that everybody could read it.
Okay, thank you, James. Director Hernandez?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with this whole area. You can see that development in the upper left-hand corner. I did that 10 years ago or so. Both of the properties on the left there would never connect to that Woodward sewer. It's uphill and it's through dedicated wetland open space. So it's never, those two properties would come to the south and connect into the property that the Mission Hills people are proposing to use. I think most of us are familiar, all of us may be familiar with that Woodward cut there. It is 100% blue granite. And so can we not condition the Reza property to go to the north? And that would eliminate the requirement for the 200 foot to the south.
So we looked at that at a water sewer study, Director Hernandez, and it works either way. As far as the constructability goes, it'd be up to Reza whether we can't. So in other words, if we had a sewer capacity issue going to the north or going to the south, then we could condition them to go to the north. Or vice versa. The problem is we don't have a nexus. And staff can't just conditions development without some sort of nexus. We don't want to just make up rules. So we need a nexus to do so. And really the sewer study that KB Homes actually paid for shows the nexus is clear. They can hydraulically and also from a capacity-wise sewer either to the north or to the south. Now, just so you know, staff is actually in agreement with KB that it'd be very hard for them to sewer to the south. So really, there's no argument. Staff would normally support waiving this condition. The only difference between what KB wants and what staff is looking at is waiving it with condition. I think KB is looking for a full waiver and just release them. And staff is saying, well, we want to waive it, but we want to make sure that the district is not held liable in the future. We have a 20-year payback policy that's already in place through a policy or ordinance. And we could attach that to the 20-year policy and pay back the developer if it's unutilized. So we're not looking at taking money from KB and holding it forever. We're looking at taking money from KB to limit the district's liability and then returning that money if it works out exactly as KB stated, which we don't doubt. We don't think we agree with KB that it's a hard build. We also don't know what the build looks like going to the north. It's more than twice as long, and it may be a lot less rock. That's believable, but we actually don't know.
Could we minimize the length of that timeline to when Rezar starts the project? Because once Rezar starts the project, then you'll have a document, you'll see which way their sewer.
Yeah, absolutely. If Reza has no intention to go to the south, then that money would be refunded right away through the conditions of approval. In other words, Reza's construction agreement would trigger the release of that money.
Okay.
I apologize. 20 years would be the maximum.
Can you guys hear me? This is Steve Ruffner with KB Home. Do I need to raise my hand or?
We can hear you.
You can go ahead, Mr. Ruffner.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt, but look, there's just a couple of common sense things that come to mind here. One, Mr. Sarah does not have entitlements to build a project. I want to make that clear to the board. Also, in what the staff has given the board, sewer lines will be required at the district's discretion. I mean, that's in the first paragraph. There is a constructability and maintenance problem here. It is solid blue granite. I can't imagine that the board would want to put a sewer line through solid granite that they may even have to upgrade. It would be just terribly difficult to do. And all I'm asking here is to consider, if we're going to put up some deposit for 20 years, I know they think that's a short period of time. Unfortunately, I'm 60 years old. I don't know if I'll be here when I'm 80, but at the end of the day, I think that's a long time. I do not think that the owner of the property above us is going to build it. He's going to sell it. He sold us our property, and he does not have entitlements beyond its current use. So I just would plead with the board to use their discretion and just say this is a bad idea all around due to constructability, maintenance, all of the above. And that's why I would plead to consider not doing it.
Thank you, Mr. Ruffner. Any other board comments? Yeah, I just wanted to add one. Jim, Hernandez, is your hand up from before, or did you just put it up?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, when I was reading the packet and preparing for tonight, and I had a conversation with Glenn about it too, trying to get a little bit more educated about the issue. You know, the spirit of all of our ordinances is that development pays for themselves, right? If they're gonna impact our system, they pay impact fees. If they're going to build homes, they're going to provide the water and wastewater infrastructure to support their project. And in this particular case, Mission Villas can and is going to build the infrastructure to support their project. We're asking them to add another 203 feet to maybe support a future project that may or may not happen. And I have two concerns with that, because I feel like if and when the Reza property is ever developed, then the standard is going to be that the Reza developer at that time has to provide the wastewater and water infrastructure to support their project. And they can decide if they want to go north or south, either way, but they should pay to support their project, just like Mission Villas is offering to do with their project, and every other developer that develops in our district does. The second thing is, if we do build the pipeline, and now the Vallecitos has to maintain it for who knows how many years, maybe a decade or more, I don't want the future residents on the Reza project to inherit a 10-year-old line that's been sitting in granite for 10 years. I want them to get a new line, because they're buying new construction in a new house. And imagine 10 years after they move in, the pipe starts breaking and stuff. And they're like, well, what happened? Well, this is brand new construction. Well, no, not really. So I just don't, I'm having trouble wrapping my head around this entire thing. And I think there's some fairness issues here, but there's definitely some quality control issues here, and a lot of common sense issues here. And I think for me, it's an easy one to waive, but I'll put it out there for the rest of my board members. But I can name, 10 good reasons why we should waive this.
I would agree.
I think that everything that you've said makes sense, Director Sanella. But I think what we need to do is maybe reevaluate the policy, because that is what is sticking with me. If this is a policy that we have and there needs to be room for flexibility, then I think we need to revisit the policy. Because I agree with you. I think I'm having trouble wrapping my head around why we're in this situation to begin with. I'm not sure why it wasn't noticed in the construction agreement that this was solid granite, because I think that does not make common sense. That is part of the common sense that you've been talking about. But I think that waiving it sets a bad precedent, even though it makes sense. So I think perhaps what we should do, I'm not sure that we have to make a decision on this tonight, but we should revisit the policy and build in some flexibility with the policy. And then we can have the freedom to do what makes sense for this particular instance. I think that's where I net on this, just to protect us because we're working with limited information, and it's hard to make decisions about what might happen, and that's what we're being asked to do. But the thing that sort of my ears perked up when Mr. Gumpel said this is part of our policy. I think if it was not part of our policy, it's an easy decision. But we do have a policy, and we have policies for a reason. So let's revisit the policy. Let's try to build in some flexibility.
Yeah, no, I agree, Director Boyd Hodgson, and I mentioned that to Glenn too when I was talking to him about this. Is that this is yet another policy that we probably need to review and clarify some things. I wasn't in my research leading up to this meeting tonight. James, can you just reiterate, is this an actual policy? Because I was hearing things like it's a best practice or standard or
it's in our standards. It's our design guideline policy. It's not an ordinance, and that's why there's a flexibility. That's why we don't apply it uniformly if it doesn't make sense. Just to clarify, the entitlement process, that has nothing to do with it. There's a lot of times benefiting properties have no entitlements beyond it. That happens almost on every project. And the board sees these extensions frontage on almost every project. It's part of an agreement with letters between the city of San Marcos and Vallecitos that was established in the 80s for orderly planning and orderly development. The second thing is and as far as the pipeline itself, it not being there, again, staff is actually supportive of it not being there. But as far as the reasoning not being there, because it's in granite, about a third of our infrastructure is in granite. We live in a very granitic area. Once it's a constructability issue, but we build pipes in granite all the time. And once it's in granite, upsizing the pipe, maintaining the pipe is really easy because you've already carved out for the pipe zone and there's already room for it. So that's not an issue. Our water line is in granite over there. Our water lines are in granite all throughout the district. It's a very normal thing. So it's a constructability issue. It's not a maintenance or liability issue for the district, but it is, in fact, a constructability cost. We did get a cost about $25,000 from the developer extra for putting in through the granite. So that granite cost is estimated about $25,000.
I see two hands, and Director Pinnock, you haven't had a chance yet to speak. Please go.
Yeah, okay. No, it's interesting listening to all this, and I understand all sides. One, I understand as far as the policy goes, it seems like there is flexibility based on that at the district's discretion. So this is exactly what we're doing. I mean, we're following policy. We're discussing what's in the best interest of the ratepayers, what's in the best interest of developers. We want developers to develop here. So it seems like there is flexibility already built into the policy, and that's what we're doing right now. I understand the district side as far as limiting our liability. There's a liability there. We're trying to limit that, but I also understand common sense side. There's no way, like what Mr. I think it's Suttner said, Res is going to go through all that rock. They're going to go north. I mean, just common sense to me is, they're going to go north. I don't have a problem waiving it just based on common sense, flexibility of policy. And I do see the liability concerns that James brought up, but just this discussion alone limits our liability in the future, I think. I think we're acting in the best interest of ratepayers, developers, and the district all in all by waiving and just moving forward and not making anything more difficult than it already is. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Director Pinnock. Director Hernandez?
Yeah, I was going to say some of the same things that Director Pinnock said. We do have the ability to waive. That's what this is. And the general discussion, I don't, if it's not a policy, it's the way it's been going on for the 45 years I've been here, and it works. But there are these particular projects that don't make sense to have that accomplished. So I'd be inclined to agree that we should waive this sewer extension to the north completely, and we'll let Reza figure out what to do when he shows up, if he ever does show up.
So this was an information item only. We'll be bringing the amended, if this is the way the board wants, and Glenn, you could let me know. I don't know if we need to vote on it, but we could, if this is the direction, we could bring the amended construction agreement back to the board for the amendment.
No, I don't think we need a vote right now. If we get a general concurrence, the board would like to revisit this as an amendment, then the decision would take place when we bring the amendment forward. So we don't need to prejudge how you would decide on that. So we'll bring the appropriate documents back. And if I could just make a comment and kind of echoing what Director Hernandez says, I think this process is working. I don't think you're ever going to be able to develop a policy or a design standard that will address every issue. So the fact that this item is being questioned and brought forward and a waiver is being made isn't an indictment that there's something wrong with the policy. Actually, it means that everything's working right. The system is working properly. And quite honestly, just as a heads up, you're going to see more and more of these. We're getting down to the projects and properties that are most difficult to develop. So as time goes on, we're going to be dealing with these kind of scab properties and difficult to develop. There's a reason, maybe not this property in particular, but there's a reason some of these properties have remained undeveloped. And as land becomes scarcer, developers are willing to do it. And it's going to challenge our existing standards. And we make the judgment. And that's why the very first sentence, at the district's discretion. And I think we used proper discretion at the time. We don't always have 100% of the information. We don't know which way Reza Shara wants to go. We don't know the actual construction cost estimates. I don't know if we know the full extent of the blue granite, for example. It may go further north than everybody thinks. We just don't know all those things. We make decisions on what we have in front of us at the time. But if the board would like to see this back at the next available board meeting with a waiver of that condition, we're happy to do that.
I think I would like to see that.
I think it's important to document it. And I didn't appreciate that there was already flexibility built into the policy. So I appreciate that discussion and that clarification. I think that makes it easy for me as well. So I think amending the construction agreement would be the appropriate thing to do and bringing it back.
Okay. I think we can bring it back at the next meeting. James, let me know if I'm wrong, but it's a fairly straightforward item.
Absolutely. We could bring it back. We'll have to amend it and we'll give it to KB because they'll have to agree to the amendment. And then which should be pretty straightforward if we're just removing that 203 lineal feet. And then we could bring it back for action as a waiver or amendment at the next meeting.
And just so I can say this on the record, just to be clear and for the record, the board did not tonight decide to waive the condition. They asked staff to bring the item forward at the next available board meeting to consider waiving the condition.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. And I know Director Pinnock definitely articulated it better than what I did in the beginning, but I didn't want staff to take it away that the board or me in particular felt that you guys were doing anything wrong. You guys were working your normal through your normal guidelines, and this is why the standard, the policy, whatever it is, has that flexibility built into it. And this is one of those examples of outside that 90% that I mentioned earlier, where maybe the standard doesn't necessarily make sense. So thank you all. Great discussion. And Mr. Ruffner, I hope you're still there and you can hear, but it sounds like somebody from staff's maybe going to reach out or they just need to come to the next meeting, or how does that look like?
One, this is Steve Ruffin with KB Home. One, we appreciate staff and the board considering our request, and yes, we would support the elimination of the requirement. We're happy to work with staff to get the amendment back to the board, and we do appreciate your flexibility, and we know you haven't made a decision, but it sounds like, I think that it's going the right way, not through that blue granite. So I really appreciate your consideration.
Okay, so James, you're gonna take it?
Yeah, we'll just basically bring a item for board consideration to amend the existing construction agreement for Mission Villas and KB Homes, the Mission Villas project. And then in there, basically we'll just outline that we're eliminating the 203 lineal feet along the frontage of Woodward Street that is located in our policy. So it'll be a real simple staff report. We've brought other amendments to the board in the past. So this one will be, fairly low. It'll be the same figure that you're looking at, and it'll just be a hatch mark with the figure that I showed, showing what we're eliminating.
And President Sinella will coordinate with the developer and let them know when it's going to be on the agenda.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Let's move along and go to item 2.3, project acceptance of the Meadowlark Water Reclamation Facility.
Yeah, this should be a pretty straightforward item, and Ryan Morgan's going to take this item for the board.
Thank you, General Manager Pruitt. Good evening, directors of the board. For the project acceptance of the Meadowlark Water Reclamation Facility Headworks Improvement Project, I'm happy to report construction is complete. The Meadowlark Reclamation Facility Headworks is responsible for grit removal process prior to the primary treatment processes further on downstream. The previous mechanical augers in the headworks were installed in 2006. They showed decreased efficiency in grit removal, causing operations and maintenance deficiencies throughout several of the processes at Meadowlark. This project replaced the existing augers and control panels with new augers, electrical materials, and control panels. The main project goal was to provide increased operational efficiencies throughout the plant, including reliability in the headworks itself. District staff received and opened bids on October 15th, 2020 from two contractors, Jameson Engineering and Don Peterson Contracting. Jameson Engineering was the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. The board of directors awarded the contract to Jameson Engineering for $397,829 on November 4th, 2020. Construction began on June 14th, 2021, after a long lead time to acquire the materials, mainly the augers themselves, and was completed shortly thereafter on August 11th, 2021. There was one district initiated change order to install a water chute in the new augers. It was a small change order, only amounting to $1,600 or 0.4% of the original contract value, which took it up to just under $400,000 in total. This was the only change order, and staff self-performed construction management and inspection services, along with the active project management services throughout construction. Fiscal impact is identified on page 81 of your board packet. The project is identified in the fiscal year 21-22 budget with an amount of $475,000. The project funding source was 100% taken from sewer replacement funds. The total project cost and budget summary are identified on page 82, showing the construction value, change order 1, planning and design services, which were conducted in-house, along with the staff and overhead services during construction, primarily consisting of the CM and inspection. This amounted to $444,235, leaving us with a $30,765 budget surplus. And with this, staff recommends project acceptance and authorizing the general manager to file a notice of completion and release payment retention funds to the contractor following the 60-day notice period, provided no claims are filed in conformance with the contract documents. And I can answer any questions there may be at this time.
Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate the report. I see a hand, Director Hernandez.
Yes, a bit unrelated, but we had our capital improvement committee meeting this morning in Encina, and we're replacing a grinder because of over 1,000% increase in materials coming into the system that are face masks, tissues, gloves, all kinds of nasty things. Are we having the same problem at Meadowlark?
Ragging is a big industry-wide problem, and it's common at Meadowlark as well. With generally speaking, ragging and debris coming in. The old augers had a smaller cross-sectional area that would allow flow to come through and be channeled into the auger itself. The new augers are much wider and essentially encompass the entire incoming channel of flow. So basically speaking, the old augers let a lot of the ragging and debris right on through into the primary process, which would allow too much debris in without taking it out as part of the screenings process. The new augers basically capture 95 to 100% of that cross-sectional area now. So it is a big improvement. They've already noticed increased operational efficiencies at Meadowlark.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Just quick, it looks like the old auger is what, about 15-year life expectancy?
15-year life expectancy in a very corrosive environment. For those who have not been inside the Headworks building, it's extremely toxic. It is a turbulent area where off-gassing occurs. It has to be ventilated to alleviate the H2S gases which are in there before anyone can enter. So that corrosive environment actually increases the degradation of those augers in time. So 15 years doesn't sound like a very long time, but inside this environment, it's about standard for a treatment plant.
Same with the new ones, about the same.
Yeah.
We're expecting about 15.
Yeah, I'd say 15, maybe we can get 20. If we can get 25, that'd be great.
Well, a couple of points. It's caustic, not toxic, so it won't kill you, but it is very corrosive. And we did move some of the electrical equipment outside, so we're hoping that lasts a little longer.
Gotcha. No, thank you. No, great job.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, motions?
Motion to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion to approve item 2.3 and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and conduct a roll call vote. Director Boyd Hodgson.
Yes.
Director Eltharp.
Yes.
Director Pinnock.
Yes.
Director Hernandez.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you, Ryan. Phenomenal
Thank you.
job as always.
And Ryan, could you stop sharing your screen, please? There you go.
Oh,
Okay, moving right along to item 2.4, Capital Improvement Program Annual Report.
Yeah, we'll just turn that right over to Ryan.
okay, you can see my my screen, the slideshow.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm going to just run through real quick the the fourth quarter of last fiscal year, 2021 fiscal year. Won't spend too much time on this, but I'm just going to share a different screen. There we go. All the directors are able to do this anytime they want. We post our quarterly updates on our website. And if you come to the website and go to departments, come down to engineering, go down to the capital facilities cog, you click on this and you can see active capital improvement projects. This will take you to a little interactive map that shows little thumbnails on all of our active projects at the time. I'll take you to the Interceptor project, which is one of our largest ones. You snap on the thumbnail, it gives you a quick overview of the project itself. And then if you want more information, you come down here to this link, click on this link, and it will give you the actual quarterly report, where the project stands as of today and where it's going in the future as well. With outstanding issues to identify, it gives you a breakdown of the budget amounts, the contract amount, the amounts paid to date, and amounts remaining. Even provides a summary of change orders on the job. So it really gets into to a lot of specifics, and this is a good example of a project just because it's the largest capital improvement project we've been working on over the last year. So I'm not going to get into really any more of the updates than that. The quarterly updates are updated on a quarterly basis. So anytime these post the spec sheet, that quarterly report sheet will get updated itself. With that, I'm going to stop sharing and go back to my presentation. All right. As for the end of the year capital improvement project summary, we had a very productive year in 2020, 2021. Primarily, the largest project that moved the needle was the San Marcos Interceptor Phase 2. In total, we had just over 8.6 million in contract totals. In the year, we paid out just under 7 million of that contract total. We only had 3.36% change orders out of the 8.6 million contract total. That was divvied up by 8 total change orders. And a total amount of design contracts or professional services agreements with consultants was about $1.275 million throughout the year. So not only did we have a lot going on in construction, we also had a lot of active management of the design process, planning and design, and overseeing our consultants and the next wave of construction projects that are coming down the pipeline. I just, to highlight, 3.36% change orders is out of 8 change orders. That is within the fiscal year when that ends. I'm going to show you another slide here in a minute that has a little bit higher value, and that is the actual amount of change orders on each project, which didn't necessarily end at the end of the fiscal year. And I'll just define that a little bit better here. This is just a chart showing the cash flow throughout the fiscal year. The left actually shows totals of the projected monthlies and actual monthlies on the left axis. The right axis shows your projected cumulative totals. It took us a little bit of time, about a quarter, first quarter, to get really ramped up on some of these construction projects. You can see October, November, December really had a lot of work going on, whereas July, August, September didn't. And we also had some previous projects from carryover year of fiscal year 1920. We were wrapping up in the early part of the fiscal year as well. This is just a little summary of the history at the district going all the way back to 2006, 2007 to current. And what we do with this is we highlight the total contracts amount, total construction amounts, change orders on each year, and then that respective percentage of change orders. 4.64% in 2020, 2021 is representative of all the work we did even beyond the close of the fiscal year. So some of the projects carried over beyond June 30th of 2021. And those numbers are captured in here as well, as long as those previous projects that got carried into the fiscal year. What we like to highlight here is industry averages on change orders can be in the ballpark of 10 to 15% at some agencies. We pride ourselves in active management of projects and seeing, being a part of the design team and construction management team to really limit the amount of unforeseens that come about. Although sometimes unforeseens do happen, and there are certain times when district initiated change orders are necessary to build a better product in the end. So those district initiated changes are really what we're looking at here. But if you factor in our average over the last 15 years or so of 5.17%, that gives us an average change order total of $290,000 on average. When you sum it all up over that time, that puts our total change orders over that 15-year span about $4.3 million out of a total contract value of almost $85 million. If that were extrapolated to, say, a 15% higher industry standard, we would be looking at a change order total instead of 4.3 million of about 12.6 million. So just doing some simple math, over 15 years time, we've roughly, by active managing these jobs, saved the district approximately $8 million. Now, some of this is relying on assumptions, and obviously the numbers change a little bit as your assumptions change. Highlighting two of the projects which we closed out in the fiscal year, San Marcos Interceptor Phase 2 is actually still ongoing, hasn't received acceptance yet, but it was substantially complete in the fiscal year. We're basically just wrapping up the final 5% of work on that job. All the main line, trunk line, 42-inch diameter sewer is installed, accepted, and sewer is flowing down it today. We have to date 5.5% change order total on that project. The original contract amount was $6.3 million, by far the largest construction capital improvement project we had that really moved the needle the most in capital this year. And with an original project budget at award of $8.75 million, we're still tracking things today, and we're making some conservative assumptions on where we're going to close out on the job. And as of today, it appears we're going to have a budget shortfall of about 2%, or $200,000 roughly. But some of that is subject to change because, as I said, the project's not completed yet, and there's some recent developments happening right now where we actually might be eliminating some scope. So this number is really subject to change, and I'll be sure to bring it back to the board to give the board the final update on final closing change order as well as project acceptance. A smaller project was a tank refurbishment at North Twin Oaks Tank. Original contract amount was just about $500,000. We received a substantial credit on that project. We actually had a negative change order percentage, -7%, and had about a $15,000 budget surplus. One project I'm not highlighting because it's a power purchase agreement and not a traditional capital improvement project, is a district-wide solar project. We received permission to operate from SDG&E on the 17th of June. So we really wrapped up, I guess you'd call that substantial completion on this job. It's not officially over yet. We are still wrapping up some final punch list items, but very significant project for the district, as all the directors know, and really didn't require any capital investment from the district, which is the greatest benefit, beyond staff labor time, not only in capital facilities, but also inspections during construction. But I didn't highlight that because there's really no capital investment per se on this project besides that. Some pictures of the San Marcos Interceptor Phase 2 project. I was happy to see the picture on the right as the cover photo on the budget. That was pretty neat. And this is the North Twin Oaks Tank #1 tank refurbishment, showing some before pictures of the inside of the tank and the rafters exposed, and then the conditions after the coatings were installed of the brand new coatings of the inside of the tank. The outside was also resurfaced as well and recoated. And with that, I will field any questions there may be. This is an informational item for the board, and I'm available to take any questions there may be.
Thanks again, Ryan. Any questions, comments? Oh, Director Althar.
Yeah, thanks for the report, Ryan. Great information. I was wondering on the district-wide solar project, and maybe this is a better question for the general manager, but are we developing some kind of a performance dashboard that we can easily look at, say month to month, that shows the performance of the project and how much money we're saving?
Yeah, we actually are, and we're working, I believe, with Terra Verde on that. And Ryan, Ryan or James, you may want to add a little bit more to that.
We have a dashboard available. We actually are integrating our existing photovoltaic carport at the headquarters into an asset management program along with the assets of the power purchase agreement. And Terra Verde is on board to provide asset management services for that. So not only do we have a dashboard available to provide the information you mentioned, but we have a consultant on board to make sure we're meeting our goals of the PPA and the solar provider is not falling short of that on a monthly or annual basis. But yes, to answer your question, we have that information.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? It does not look like it. Okay, thank you, Ryan.
Thank you.
Good, lots of good information there. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 2.5, the COVID financial reporting presentation.
Yeah, I'll take that, President Sanella. So when preparing the FY21 budget, so last year's budget, our world was just in the beginning stages of the COVID pandemic. And you may recall that the staff prepared a COVID budget, which made certain assumptions about how COVID may impact the finances of the district. And the board approved that budget and directed staff to track the actual impacts and make regular presentations to the board. And we've been doing that over the course of the last year. So tonight's report will be the last report for fiscal year 21, and it'll reflect the entire fiscal year's experience. So I'm going to turn it over, and I think Mike Arthur is going to start the presentation, but there'll be a few people presenting on it. And we'll try to keep it brief because I know the meeting's running a bit long. So Mike, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, General Manager Perone, President Sanella, members of the board. So as General Manager Perone mentioned, we are here to give an end of the year financial plan update for fiscal year 2021. And at the beginning of the year, we mentioned that we would be tracking certain things such as the water sales, water purchases, the delinquency charges, lock charges, and bad debt expense. And we'd be comparing them, the actual versus what we budgeted. So Michael, if you click one more, maybe two more. Go ahead to the next one. Keep going until it gets to the next slide. So just as a general recap, the district has about 22,000 active meters, and about 20,000 of them are the 5/8 3/4 meters. And go ahead to the next. And by customer type, again, about 20,000 of them are single family residential and multifamily residential. So next slide. So what we're going to review right for this portion of it is the water sales and production for the fiscal year 2021 as compared to 2020, and also as compared to what we budgeted. So for the different types of segments, we'll look at the commercial, industrial, agricultural customers, our residential customers, and our irrigation customers. And again, we talked about how residential customers make up about 80 to 85% of our customer base, but they make up only about 65% of our sales, 64% of our sales. About 25% of our sales are the irrigation and agricultural customers, with about 11% of our sales attributable to our commercial and industrial customers. We'll also look at the production where we buy our water. And again, even though all the water flows through SDCWA or the Water Authority, we have three what I'll call sources of water: the water directly from the Water Authority, and then our contract amounts with OMWD and the desal plant. Next slide, Michael. So for the, click one more. Okay, just so for a recap, our fiscal year 2021 sales ended up at about 14,800 acre feet. That is about 12.9% higher than the previous fiscal year. We did see, and we talked about this before with COVID, we didn't see, we saw an increase when we expected a decrease for COVID, but most of the increase came in the residential sector where most customers were spending more time at home, schooling at home, working at home, doing more loads of laundry. And what's good is that towards the end of the year, a lot of the commercial and industrial picked up. So you'll see the last section is the commercial industrial, that it was actually above last year. And that's because as more businesses open, they were using more water. So that's the good news. And Michael, one more slide. Oh, so that's just highlighting the 12.9% increase from the previous fiscal year. Into the next slide. So this is just a comparison again by customer segment. And we can see that sales were up about 1,700 acre feet as compared to the fiscal year 2020. And production, or our purchases, were up about 1,500 acre feet. And again, the sales were up about 12.9% and production a little bit over 10.5%. Michael, if you can click one more, it'll bring out the gray. and then click one more. So with the COVID, what we did is worst case scenario, we did a worst case scenario budget, what we thought. And we thought that sales would go down about 4% and production also down 4%. But we did see an increase of 12.9%. And as I mentioned in previous presentations, that the increase is mainly due to the weather. And we talked about it, I think one of the first presentations talked about when Chris did his presentation, talked about the hot weather that we've had. So we have seen almost all of that 12.9% increase is due to the weather patterns from fiscal year 2021 versus the previous year, fiscal year 2020, which was a little bit wetter than normal. Can we click to one more slide? And so what I wanted to show on the bottom where it has the red little brackets down there is our purchases and our sales were up about, as I mentioned, 12 and 10% versus our what we expected for the budget of about -4%. So if you click one more slide, this will kind of show you a month-to-month projection of what we budgeted and what was actual. So the line is what we budgeted every month in terms of production. And production is a leading precursor of what our sales would be and what our actual sales were. And you can see in some of the summer months, our actual production was much higher than the budgeted. So the overall, if you look in the top right corner, Michael, can you highlight over the green? Oh, just circle over the green. Fiscal year 2021 actual versus budget is plus 15.6%. Top right corner. I just wanted to show. Okay, and I think that's the last slide. One more slide, Michael, and they'll give a summary. Okay, so in summary, fiscal year 2021 sales are up about 12.9% over fiscal year 20. And as I mentioned, about 16% over budget. The majority of the increase is due to the warmer weather. And you can notice that in the irrigation and agricultural usage, we're up about 20%. And that COVID, although it had changed the demand from commercial and industrial to residential, it had little effect on the overall demand. So we didn't see the -4%, which the industry was projecting originally. And that's a good news because like I said, most of the commercial and industrial fortunately reopened. And I think that's the last of my slides, and I would be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
So the good news is that water sales didn't dip as much as you thought they were going to during COVID. But the bad news is that water sales didn't dip as much as you thought they were going to during a major drought.
I'll do that.
It's kind of a lose-lose, right?
Yeah.
But thank you for the report.
Okay, so now I'll turn it over to our accounting supervisor, Michael Rathson, who will view the delinquency lock charges as well as bad debt expenses. Michael.
Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the board. Thank you for that introduction, Mike. What we have here is showing here the number of customers that were past due.
Michael, your screen is not shared.
Excuse me one moment. Okay, can everyone see that okay?
It's just a file directory.
We're seeing your folders, not the right screen.
You probably have to stop sharing and then click on it again and reshare.
Okay, there, share screen. Pick the screen you want. And here we are. Highlight it. And share. They should see. Okay.
We can see it now.
Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. All right. So we'll go ahead and move along with the looking at the gray bars here. The gray bars are shown as of June 30th, 2021. And the orange bars are from June of 20, and the blue bars are as of June 2019. Now, what I wanted to go ahead and show you was that the increase from June of 19 is, sorry, I'm actually having issues seeing with Zoom at the moment. Okay. Okay, so what I wanted to illustrate here, folks, was that the increase was from June of 2019 to June of 2020. That's where the real increase was once COVID got started. You'll see that the customers that were past due as of June 2019 over 91 days was about 29, and we did see an increase to 229 as of June 20, and it did increase a bit more to 414 as of June of 2021. And continuing on, this is the average customer balance. Essentially, this is the dollar amounts of those customers from the previous slide. And what I wanted to show you here, because there is a general increase in the amount over the 3 years, but the amount here at June of 2019 of customers that were past due over 91 days was $269 was their average past due balance. And it went up to $680 as of June of 2021. Now, it is important to note here that that is mainly attributable to the fact that the district has not been locking throughout the fiscal year. And so that gives rise to a number of customers carrying larger balances than we might ordinarily expect. Let's see here. So now this is a slide that I know you all are familiar with. This is the delinquency fees waived. And so what we started doing here as of June 30, 2021, there were 57 customers in the special care program. Now, just to reiterate, for those who don't recall, the special care program was started with with COVID. It's something that the district implemented to go ahead and make sure to help their customers. And so basically, if somebody called in and let us know that they had issues, if they were able to provide documentation of economic hardship, then we went ahead and put them in the special care program where we would just go ahead and waive the monthly fees. So as of June 30, 2021, there were 57 customers in the special care program. There were about 3 that called in and were noted, and there were 11 customers that called in for a one-time fee waiver. And here we have the fee waivers due to COVID-19. You'll see that at the end of the first quarter, the amount of fees that were waived that will not be received by the districts was about $1,700. It did dip towards the end of the calendar year. And then we did see a rise coming up through to the end of the fiscal year at June 30, 2021, with a fee waiver amount of $1,851. And it is worth noting that that is still not a large amount.
Good question on that.
Yeah, sure.
Is that a fee waiver or a bill waiver? I mean, are we waiving the total amount of the bill or just some fees?
Oh, so this is directed just strictly to the late fees, not the principal, not the bill itself.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I had a question, Michael. I was trying to crunch some numbers on my calculator. If I'm doing my math right, on your last two slides, you said for the current period, there was the average bill that was unpaid was about $680. And then the previous slide, you said there was about, if I remember correctly, 403 or 405 of those customers in that range. Does that equate? So yeah, if you can go back a couple slides. So you got the 680 is the average customer balance for those that are past due, and then go back. And and then 414 of them. So I'm coming up with $281,520. Is that an accurate way to calculate that cost, or am I not doing it correctly?
Let's see. So the number of customer balances at June 30, 414. The average customer balance. Sorry, what number did you come up with?
Yeah, so I multiplied the 414 number of customers for that particular period, and I basically took the gray bar there and the gray bar on your highest level one for the 91 plus. I'm guessing that it's probably not perfect math. I just wanted to verify.
Yeah,
there's probably a blend in there, right? Or
I was trying not to jump in because I'm printing right now, but that number is correct. It's about 281,000 that's over for 2000.
Okay. Well, thank you for confirming that.
And I think Director Sonola, you asked if that was lost revenue. That's not lost revenue. It's just delinquent at the moment.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I've stopped printing now. So yeah, it's 281,000. That's just outstanding. So it's one of those numbers that we're going to have to reach out to customers and try to work out payment plans, which we'll be bringing to the Finance Committee and the board in the future to address.
Okay.
Okay, moving on now, we have the number of delinquency fees billed. Now, this is the number of people that were, we had late fees billed to their accounts over a 3-year period. Now, as you can see, there is not a lot of variation in these accounts. Now, I did want to go ahead and point out that we did see a small increase at June 30, 2021, up to 1,637. But again, it's not a very large increase.
So another question on this slide, because data and statistics can often tell you a couple different stories. So is it accurate to look at these bars and say that even during normal times, pre-COVID times, that we're a large organization that bills a large number of customers, and that we're always going to have some customers who are not going to pay their bills? And if I'm reading this June category, if you look at, or if you just look at the 2019 numbers, the teal green color, if that's what that is, you've been hovering around the 1450 range. And at your highest now in June of 2021, you're at 1637. So is it safe and accurate to say that the majority of those 1637 are probably not COVID related? There's been an uptick of a couple hundred.
Yes, that would be an accurate, fairly accurate statement. Yes, because yeah, as you pointed out, the number, even if you just look at if you just focus on the 2019 numbers, we're kind of hovering around the 14 to 1500 range. So it just brings to light that yes, we are a large organization with about 22,000 and change customers. So it is going to be expected that we always have a certain number of these delinquency fees billed.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. And now here we have the delinquency charges year to date. As I know that has been discussed previously, the district for fiscal year 2021 did budget conservatively when it came to expected delinquency charges. You'll see that if you focus just on that last portion there for June, the last portion of the fiscal year, the total budgeted amount for delinquency charges was about $84,000. Now that number, the actual number that was realized actually came in at about $407,000. And we also included the year-to-date prior information to show that there was actually an increase in this category, even from a prior year. Okay, and now we have the accounts that were not locked due to COVID. So ordinarily, these accounts would likely have been locked if we were locking during fiscal year 21. You'll see that the number of accounts in the month of June came out to 222. And the vast majority of that is making up 197 of that number was single family residences.
Does this number compare to last year and the year before?
That is a good question, and I will check with Wes on that if we have any more information on that. But if not, then we can certainly find those numbers for you.
Yeah, I think Director Boyd Hodgson, it's a tough question to answer because this is only ones that were not locked due to COVID. So when we start looking at previous years, there were none that weren't locked because of COVID. So
sure, but I think we can still make a comparison of at this point in time, how many accounts, maybe not last year, but in 2019, how many accounts did we typically have locked at the end of the fiscal year? I think maybe that's the comparison I'm looking for.
Okay.
And it would be interesting to see last year too. So maybe 2019, 2020, and 2021.
Yeah, we can get to 2020 pretty quickly because we have that presentation, but the 2019 we can look up to see how many were locked during 2019 when we were locking customers.
Yeah, it's a great question. When you do find it, Wes or Mike, or Michael, if you could share it out to myself as well, and maybe the whole board if they're interested.
We'll send it to the whole board.
Just while we're on the topic, I was not going to, but any discussion on when we're going to start locking again?
Well, that's something we're going to bring, and Wes touched on it. We're going to be bringing it to probably a finance committee and then to the board to find out what is the board's desire. We think that in September timeframe, the state imposed moratorium will expire, and it'll be up to the individual districts to decide what they want to do moving forward in terms of locking delinquent customers out.
And Director Pinnick, just to add a little bit more color around that, and some background, Vallecitos actually implemented the not locking out for COVID before the state did, and so that's some of our precedents there, some of our background.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. So we'll go ahead and move on to continuing the discussion with lock charges. Year to date, you will see that the gray and orange bars have added up over the fiscal year to nil. That is because, as we said, we have not been locking customer accounts. Now, we wanted to show you some prior year information just to give you an idea. Ordinarily, by the end of the fiscal year, we probably expect to collect around 80,000 or so. And now, so we have the bad debt expense year to date. Now, it's important to note that this is another aspect of the budget where the district budgeted conservatively, estimating it to be about 450,000 for bad debt expense, because it was difficult to budget for this type of item considering the situation. But the amount that we selected through our process was about 10 times more so than we would ordinarily expect to have of bad debt expense throughout the year. And so I wanted to go ahead and highlight here that as of June 30, 2021, the final budgeted amount for the year was for 450,000. The actual realized bad debt expense was about 265,000. And now, so that is higher than prior year bad debt expenses, but still notably below the budgeted amount for fiscal year 21.
Can you just remind me what is a bad debt expense? What does that mean?
So essentially, bad debt expense is when we build a customer over a period of time, and they have simply, for one reason or another, not been able to pay their bills. So we have a set procedure for once a certain amount of time has passed by, the bad debt expense will be booked, and essentially the revenue that was billed will be written off, essentially, is the conclusion.
And real quick, sorry to jump in, Michael. Most of those customers, Director Boyd Hodgins, are customers that have ended their service and they've moved out. So they would have moved out, never paid their last bill. So we'll send them to collections. That's the majority, about 90% of them.
Okay, thank you for your input, Mike. I appreciate it. And I believe that is actually the conclusion of our COVID-19 financial plan update. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Well done. I'll open it up for any comments, questions. I think maybe we got all those comments and questions out of the way during the presentation.
And President Sanella, if I can add real quick, we do not intend to make monthly or quarterly reports going forward. We tracked it for the year. We'll keep an eye on it behind the scenes, but we don't plan on coming forward to the board at regular periods unless we see something out of the normal.
Yeah, and I mean, one out of five, I'm okay with that. However, I do think prior to us ever considering making changes to our existing temporary policies about collecting shutoffs, those types of things, I'd like to have an update at that. I'd like to see a snapshot in time at that time.
Okay. All right.
It seems to me that having these updates, and maybe I know that they're, that it requires a lot of work to put together, and I appreciate the presentations when we receive them, but this is a public forum, and this is one way that our rating agencies can also see what we're doing. So I'm wondering, could there be any impact on our rating agencies? I know that we can send them documentation when requested, but could this potentially have any impact on a rating agency looking at us from the outside looking in? And secondly, I worry about the perception of the public, because we have set a precedent that we do these presentations somewhat regularly, and it's a transparency issue. So those are my concerns.
Wes, you want to address the rating agency question?
Yeah, rating agencies are really just looking at our budget and how we took into consideration the COVID impacts. And for fiscal year 2022, I mean, we did have mostly recovery in there. We really didn't have many COVID considerations, given that it hasn't had a major impact on water sales or water purchases. And our bad debt expense hasn't gone up as much as we had thought it would. So while it's built into the budget, there's not much to compare it to. So rating agencies are looking at our 5-year plan and our budget. So they've already asked us about that and considered it. So these presentations, I don't think they'd impact what the rating agencies are looking at. As far as public perception, we could still bring them periodically. However, most of the time you're going to get the same update where it's like customer accounts overall. We've got some average past due balances, but water sales and water purchases we don't believe are going to be impacted by COVID. So that's really not going to be much news there. So it's really up to the board as far as what you'd like to see and how often you'd like to see us update these, but there's no real budget to actual comparison anymore or COVID impacts. It's more just here are the past due accounts.
Yeah, the reason regarding your question on the transparency, we put this in place specifically because we adopted a COVID budget in 21. And since we didn't do that in 22, there's really nothing to compare from a budget perspective. So although the information is interesting, it's not pertinent to the reason we put this in place at the beginning, but happy to do whatever the board would like.
Yeah, we used the Raftellus and the AWWA report to do the 2021 budget. And as Michael mentioned, we assumed 70% of delinquency charges wouldn't be collected, that bad debt expense would be 10 times as much. And all of that was based on Raftellus, their report, and the AWWA, what they anticipated for fiscal year 2021. None of that's really come to fruition. So at this point, we're basing it on our 2022 budget, which doesn't include that. So again, there's nothing to compare to.
Thank you. Any other questions, thoughts, comments?
And there's no action required tonight, President Sanella, it's just informational.
Okay, I don't see any other speakers on this one. Speaking of speakers, do we still have Miss Martin? I feel horrible that did we ever make contact with her or?
Yeah, she actually was able to join the meeting. She's still on. I believe she's the one titled guest GM for Gail Martin. Unless there's a guest general manager I'm not aware of, I think it's Gail Martin.
Okay. Well, I'll just reiterate, Miss Martin, if you're still with us, feel free to raise your hand again, and we'll try to recognize you right away. Sorry for the difficulties tonight. Okay, moving on to item 2.6, the Association of California Water Agencies Committee appointments.
Yeah, pretty quick item. So Aqua is requesting committee nominations from its members for its 2022 and 2023.
Oh, hey, Glenn, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but Miss Martin did just put her hand up, and then she's been waiting here for over 2 hours.
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and make a presidential decision and recognize Miss Martin.
Go ahead, Miss Martin.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, thank you very much. I was able finally to come in as a guest panel. I do recognize the technical difficulties and I appreciate the help. It was quite a long time coming, but I still would think for those people who are calling in and listening who do not have the benefit of seeing the screen, it would be really super nice if everyone could just identify themselves as they start speaking so people know what they're listening to. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Martin. I don't know if we need to make necessarily a board rule about that, but I'll try to do better. It's a little bit unnatural for me. And so I struggle with it, but I will definitely, this is President Sanella, but I'll try to definitely do better. Hopefully though, we'll be back into the boardroom here before too long. So, but I understand the concern that you raised. Okay, Glenn Broom, please continue.
Yeah, thank you, President Sanella. So as I was saying, Aqua is requesting nominations for committee assignments from its members for the 2022-2023 term. Aqua has 13 standing committees. Some of those committees have limitations on the total number of employees or total number of members. Some have limits on how many members can be from any of the specific regions, and some allow an unlimited number of members. Currently, Vallecitos is represented on 3 of the 13 committees. Director Elitharp is on the Energy and Water Quality Committees, and Director Hernandez is on the Groundwater Committee. So staff is just looking for director input regarding any committees that any directors would want to be considered for. We would fill out a nomination form and it would be submitted by the deadline, which is September 30th. Just a note that Vallecitos is responsible for all costs associated with participation on the committees. That includes travel, lodging, all those types of things. But keep in mind that submitting an interest in serving on a committee does not guarantee that you'll be selected to be on a committee. The incoming Aqua president will make the final committee appointments, and the final decisions will be made in December. So with that, just want to see if there's any directors that want to express new interest or re-interest in the committees they're already on.
Yeah, thank you, Glenn. Director Hernandez.
Yes, I would like to continue on the groundwater committee. I know we have a little groundwater, and maybe with the Encina recycled project going to be coming online here shortly, and by that I mean within the next decade, maybe we'll have an opportunity to get some of that water put into our groundwater. Thank you.
Any other interest by any of my colleagues to seek a nomination? I think it's kind of a, if you're interested, go just let staff know. But Director Elitharp.
Yeah, I'd like to continue with the two committees I'm on, the Energy Committee and Water Quality. I appreciate it.
Okay, Director Boyd Hodgson.
I think water management looks really interesting.
Super. Okay. I'm a bit overcommitted at the moment, so I'm not going to be able to participate in any Aqua offerings, but does anybody else have? Director Pennick.
Just, so you mentioned we're only on 3 of 13?
Correct.
I mean, where would, is there any committees where I'd be more beneficial to others? I mean, to the district? Is there anyone?
Let me share my screen.
I mean, I'm looking at them, but I mean.
Okay. I don't know. It's a personal preference here. Maybe finance, if you're interested in the finance field, or.
I mean, yeah, I was either thinking local government or finance, wherever I'd be more beneficial, but I've got some time.
Which should we put you down for?
Well, see, and the thing is, I just don't, I mean, it's funny, I'm looking through here. I don't know. Let's go.
You can do both.
Financial or could, yeah, that's fine. Finance and local.
I say that a little jokingly, but remember, Director Pennick, remember it's a nomination. So maybe if you express interest for more than one and you can't get one, then maybe you can get the other. That would be the thought process there.
Okay, no, good. Sounds good. Yeah, finance and local government sound good.
Gotcha. And Director or President Sanella, nothing for you?
No, thank you. Not this time.
Okay, we'll fill out the form and we'll submit it and we'll keep you posted about the progress.
Great. Okay, if everybody's ready, we'll move on. And similar item for Aqua Region 10 board election for 22-23 term.
Yeah, so Aqua has submitted or distributed ballots for the upcoming election for their chair, vice chair, and board members. They have a nominating committee that has put forth a recommended slate of candidates, or we can cast votes for whoever we want as individuals on the ballot. But we are entitled only one vote for a slate, either the recommended slate or cast individual votes, and staff will submit the ballot completed as directed by the board.
Okay. Any questions, discussion, recommendation?
Yeah, I would say the default is probably, the default is probably the recommended slate of candidates by the nominating committee, but it's up to the board.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel qualified to argue for or against any of the people that have been recommended. So I'll see what the rest of the board says, and if everybody feels the same way I do, then we could either support that list or take no position at all.
Just a question on the bottom on Orange County. Is that Mark Lewis? Does anybody know about Mark Lewis? Was he the mayor of El Cajon previously?
I do not know.
Okay. Thought there was a Mark Lewis, mayor of El Cajon, a couple of years back that I was somewhat impressed with, but I don't know if that's the same one.
Yeah,
Do we have anyone on our board that's interested in subbing into one of the slate figures or one of the slate spots?
Well, I applied but was not accepted. So this is the nominating committee's recommendation.
Yeah, I don't think they allow like write-in candidates. They went through their kind of pre-selection and this is what they've come down with. So look at the top is the recommended slate, or the individual candidates is at the bottom of the page that I'm sharing. And you'll note that there's only one candidate for chair and one candidate for vice chair. So it's really about the rest of the board is the difference.
It's such a weird process. It's basically, do you want to choose the people we're telling you to choose, or not choose anybody at all?
I'm familiar with Richard Vasquez from Vista. And maybe, well, certainly the chair and the vice chair. So I certainly don't mind accepting the Region 10 nominating committee's slate.
Okay, Director Althorpe, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I know Richard Vasquez and Deanna Verbeek. She's with Helix, and Richard's with the VID, Vista Irrigation District. I know them pretty well, and I know of Dana Freihoff, who's the vice chair candidate. So I'd be supportive of the slate of candidates.
Okay. I don't have any druthers supporting it. I've been impressed with the Aqua organization. I've never been involved with any. This is the first time I recall even having this much involvement with any of their elections. But I trust their judgment. Like I said earlier, I couldn't tell you any reason why not to. So I'm comfortable with supporting it. I've been happy with the direction of the organization as a whole. Anybody not want to? Okay, sounds like there's consensus. Great.
So the consensus being that we'll submit the ballot proving the recommended slate of candidates.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. That concludes our action items and takes us into reports. General Manager report.
Yeah, just real quick, I just want to let the board know that our $28 million in bonds were sold at market last week. We ended up with a final all-in interest rate of 2.24%. You may remember when we started this process with the board, the interest rate we thought would be about 3%. So that it doesn't seem like a big difference, but over the 30-year period for that $28 million, we saved about $4 million just because the interest rate was favorable to us. So that's a good thing. So I just want to thank Wes and the team that we assembled. It was a lot of work. President Sanella, thank you for meeting with me after hours to sign the documents and everything, but all the hard work is done. I think we actually close tomorrow. Is that right, Wes?
That is correct. We'll be getting the wire transfer tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so we'll actually get the money. So that's a good thing. So, and that's all I wanted to share.
That's a great update. Thank you. Moving on to District Legal Counsel. Hey, Jim, we haven't heard from you all night.
Yeah, I've been kind of quiet. You haven't stretched me. I just had two items to report on. One is the redistricting effort. I added this morning, due dates are closer than they appear because they're actually accelerating the due dates on this. Under the current law, the redistricting deadline is May 11th for the November election. There is a pending Senate bill 574, which was amended yesterday, adjusting the deadline to 205 days before the election, which would accelerate that date to April 17th. I think, as folks know, the census data was delayed coming out. The feds issued theirs and locals are now issuing. So it'll be crunch time on this, but in all likelihood, we'll have to deal with that accelerated April date.
Mr. Gopin, before you go on to the next topic, this will be coming to the board, right, soon, Glenn?
Yeah, the next board meeting, we're going to be bringing an informational item and then seek board direction on how do we want to go about with the redistricting process.
Okay, thank you.
The second item I wanted to update you on is the water and wastewater arrearage payment program that's being administered by the State Water Board. There was $985 million of federal funding that was allocated by the state legislature to the State Water Board to provide relief to community water and wastewater systems for unpaid bills during the pandemic. There are some upcoming deadlines for participating in this program, which you should be aware of. There's an upcoming workshop tomorrow that someone should or it's advisable to participate in. You can get onto the state website to look at that link. This is really explaining they've issued a survey seeking information from various districts. The survey open until September 10th. And then following that, there will be a 60-day submission period for the funding. This is just kind of an overview of what Vallecitos would need to do if it wants to participate in the program. As I mentioned, you would need to attend the State Board workshop, which is on the 19th. You'll need to complete the State Board survey before September 10th. And then you begin to gather the data required to be included in your application and submit the application to participate. So there's a number of steps. It is money that is available for agencies that want to participate.
How much was the amount again?
Well, there was $985 million provided to the state legislature that was then provided to the State Water Board for this program and others.
And this is to help districts recuperate costs that lost through COVID?
Yep, for unpaid water bills and wastewater. There's a priority under the program to deal with residential first, and then if there's money left over, it would roll to commercial.
Director, go ahead, Director Boyd Hudson.
Go ahead.
Director Hernandez.
Well, I certainly hope we do participate. All of us taxpayers are paying this money one way or the other. So if we can help our district with getting some of our shortages paid back, I think we should apply and be part of that.
I agree 100%. I think it would be dereliction of duty if we did not try to get this money. If it's available, we should try to get it so that we can benefit our customers.
Yeah, I agree as well. And with that, who from staff's going to be attending tomorrow, Glenn?
I'm looking at it's on my calendar. We haven't made a decision who's going to go yet, but somebody will be monitoring.
Okay, and then can we get an update at the next meeting, please?
Yep.
Just a brief, just how did the call go? What did we learn? yeah, whatever came out of it.
Okay.
Right. And then I do see Ms. Martin rose her hand again. I'd like to give her an opportunity to speak.
Go ahead, Ms. Martin.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask you if we know right off of the top, how much is our shortfall?
Wes,
well,
which shortfall are you referring to? The developer capacity fund shortfall?
No, what is our COVID shortfall?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, there's different components of the shortfall that was in the presentation that our finance team gave to us earlier. So it's a tough question to just answer as a whole, but there's different pieces of it. But Wes, could you, if you were to roughly try to calculate what the totals was, if I had to do it, I'd probably say close to 600,000 maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there are different components. I mean, there are components as far as the expenses we've incurred that we're applying for reimbursement. So we are actually working with Cal OES and FEMA to get reimbursement for certain things such as, sanitation expenses, stuff that we bought just for COVID, if we had the temperature scanners, and other items like that, plus any payroll for, labor that was paid for people who couldn't work and were out due to COVID leave. So we're preparing all those applications for Cal OES and FEMA right now. So there are those amounts that we have to look at. But then you also have, I mean, if you're looking at the budgeted numbers that we just talked about, those are different components. So, bad debt expense may have increased, but overall, how much have we lost? It's difficult to determine because we hope to recover that in the coming years. So she may be referring to the Cal OES and FEMA applications. And I don't have the numbers right now, but we will be applying for those, and I can let the board know, when we submitted applications. Because what's happening is we're working with Cal OES, giving them the numbers that we have, and they're saying, well, this will qualify, this won't, don't submit this. So we don't even have a number for that submission yet, really.
Okay.
I imagine. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, thank you, Ms. Martin, for the question. It sounds like there's going to be more data along those lines coming in the future.
Yeah. And President Sinella, I would imagine the workshop tomorrow is going to be very similar. They're going to lay out certain criteria and guidelines of what qualifies, what doesn't, who's eligible, who isn't. And so.
Yeah. And for the next meeting, we don't need a full PowerPoint deck. We just need, the 90-second version.
Yes, and I wanted to add congratulations to the bond sale. That was a job very well done. Thank you.
Thank you. Director
I have a
Pinnock?
question. So on this relief, I mean, yeah, definitely go for it. My question is, if we do get funds, are the ratepayers, those that are in default, are they relieved? If we say we're in just on the individual houses side, we're 285,000 in bad debt. We recoup 285 from the state, from the relief fund. How does that work towards those that are in default?
Yeah, so that's the devil's in the details, right? So when at the meeting, what I imagine that they'll say tomorrow at the workshop is that if you're eligible for funds, those funds have to be used to wipe the slate clean for people that are behind in their bills. You can't just pocket the money and then still try to collect from those customers. It has to be used for the purpose it was intended. How they structure that and how they word that, when do they decide that it's a bad debt? We have a definition. After like 6 months, we decide we're not going to get that money. We'll never see it again. If they use that definition, then that's the amount of money we go for. They may say, hey, anything over 90 days past due is eligible, but whatever the amount is, we'll apply for it. We'll get what we'll get, and then we'll have to apply it. And then we'll have to figure out a way of how do we apply it? Do we, if let's say we only get a third of the money that is past due, do we apply that equally to the past due customers, or do we take a third of them and pay them off in full? There's a lot of details to be worked out, but first things first is we got to get in line and hopefully get the money, and then we can figure out the details.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Gilpin, for that helpful update. Anything else?
That's everything I've got. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Elthar, San Diego County Water Authority.
Yeah, no report for me. The next regular board meeting is a week from tomorrow on the 26th.
Okay, and so we'll move on to Encina. I know Director Hernandez, you said that the Capital Improvement Committee met earlier today. I don't have a report from the Policy and Finance Committee of last week. I had an urgent matter that popped up right before the meeting, and I had to miss it, unfortunately. But please, Director Hernandez.
Yeah, we had our meeting this morning, and we had a capital improvement project status update. We're finishing up the digester improvements, the network improvements, a clarification of a strainer improvement, and that's where we have upgraded that so that we can eliminate that ragging problem. Let's see. And we're in the process of, we have a meeting, kickoff meeting with our consultant to hire our manager on Monday. And that's a 16-week program that we're going to begin with. And I've mentioned before, ultimately, we're going to get it down to 2 or 3, which the entire board will interview. The committee will do the preliminary work, but the final board will have an opportunity to do the final interviews. So that's the end of my report.
Great, thank you. Item 3.5, standing committees. Any of the committee chairs have anything to report at this time? Anything you want to share? Director Boyd Hodgson.
Thank you, President Snellis. So the P3 committee met on August 9th, and we are making great progress towards the implementation of an internship program with Palomar College. I have since had meetings with the new superintendent of Palomar College, Star Lacey Rivera, as well as Stacy Rongaitis, who's with the chamber. Additionally, I met with Godfrey Gibbetson, who is I'm going to get his title incorrect, but I'm going to look it up, the Extended Learning and Global Programs Director at Cal State University San Marcos. There's a lot of interest in partnering programs with Vallecitos. And so I hope that we can continue to move forward with internships and expansion as we can, growing smart and slow, but still providing the opportunity for good jobs for local young people. And congratulations, Wes, on that great interest rate. I hope you bought a lottery ticket that day too.
Awesome, thank you. Any other committees meet? The Finance Committee is, I think we're trying to get together on the 23rd, Glenn?
Correct.
So
I was going to reach out to Director Boyd Hodgson and check her availability.
Okay. Newsflash, Director Boyd Hodgson, sorry. We've been trying to put something out there. I thought that he had already reached out to you, sorry. But yeah, we're trying to meet on Monday if we can. If that doesn't work for you, then we can pick a different date during the month to try to get together. But I think one of the main items of discussion will be around water rates, among other things. Any other committees? Nope, cool. All right, any conferences, meetings, seminars, report outs? Director Hernandez.
Yes, I attended the California Association of Sanitary Agencies conference in San Diego. There was a nice conference, but there were a couple of things that popped out that kind of boggled my mind. PFAS, we have heard about the PFAS issue. They're wanting to test 1 to 170 parts per trillion. Just to give you an idea, because I asked, I had no idea how big that was. That's a drop of water in 20 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And PFAS is actually coming down because everyone knows it's not good. Manufacturers are eliminating it from their products. So the fact that the state is thinking about wanting us, each individual agency, to test for this is beyond absurd. one of the two things, they had presentations, award for videos for projects. And it just popped into my head that I don't know if we are applying to those, because the ones they had, the outreach was good, but I think we have done equally fine job. And for projects, the one they had was interesting. But again, this interceptor project we had, I mean, my goodness, that's right up there with the rest of them. So I don't know if we're applying for those, but we should. And the last is, what the heck, student scholarships. I don't know, Director Boyd Hodson, if the internship program is something aside from a scholarship program. I don't think we have one in Vallecitos. I know we have one at the larger area, but at the special district area. But I think we should consider putting one together for our own district. We're looking for people to come into our industry, and this would be a nice startup for a student to help them in their college career. So I don't know if you can talk about that, the finance committee, or we need to talk about it separately, put it on the agenda, but I'd like to see something happen. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Director Hernandez. Any other meetings, conferences? I attended the, let me pull up my notes here. Yesterday morning, the Council of Water Utilities, San Diego County, and the main presentation was on pure water by the Assistant Director of Pure Water and Technical Services Branch of San Diego's Public Utilities Department, John Stufflebean. And those, I think all of us are pretty familiar with the San Diego's Pure Water Project, and it was a good update. They're making a tremendous amount of progress, and they've gotten, I don't want to misquote their the number of millions in grants, but they got some very large grants recently, which is helping to the tune of millions. That's helping them move things along. There's still a lot of regulatory and governmental shifts that have to take place for them to end up creating portable water and then serving it to the people. But they're making a lot more progress about potentially creating the recycled water and then shipping it up to a nearby reservoir, letting it blend in with the rest of the water, and then distributing it that way. It sounded from their presentation that was probably more likely, although it's a lot more costly. And so it's yet to be seen, but but it was a good update. I think everybody in the audience and the speaker and probably all of us agree that recycled water is going to be a piece of the puzzle in one way, shape, or form in the future. If nothing else, we're already using it for irrigation purposes, but that'll probably continue to expand. And when you live in the desert, you need lots of pieces of puzzle when you're talking about water, because you want to have a diversified portfolio. Did anybody else go to that breakfast? It wasn't a breakfast, it was online, but it's typically a breakfast. Oh, okay, well, I'm glad I went. Cool. Moving on to 4.1, the Urban Water Institute annual conference is coming up. That's going to be in person. It's going to be in Costa Mesa, California, so it's not too far away. If you have not already expressed an interest to staff, please do so if you want to go. And then item 5.1, director's comments or future agenda items. Director Hernandez.
Yes, I would like to attend the Urban Water Institute conference. So if Ann could make those arrangements, I'll be available.
Ms. Johnson, you got it?
We got it.
Okay. September 8th and 9th. Oh, I can't go. I'd like to go, but I can't go. Any other future agenda items or director comments? Okay, everybody. Well, that concludes our meeting. We'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you all for joining in from the public, and thank you for those who took time and prepared to give presentations tonight. We really appreciate it, and thank you to my colleagues. Have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night, all.
Everyone, good night.